Now we've come to the planning step in the change plan process. This is where we'll give an overview of what will be covered in the learning portion of our time together. This step is simple and quick. In the stress module, you can see that the first thing we'll be doing is defining stress. What is it? Next, we'll talk about positive versus negative stress and the differences between the two. We then direct our focus in a more personal way as we talk about how stress impacts the life of the adolescent. Next, we discuss what unhealthy techniques for dealing with stress look like, what healthy techniques look like, and finally, how to strive to prevent stress in the first place. Once we've briefly gone over what's to come, we move on to step 4 of the change plan process, which is the intervention stage. The allotted time for this stage is around 40 minutes, which will be the majority of your time together. Intervention is the stage in which you'll offer education about the topic, strategies, and try to help the youth apply what they learn to their own life in a meaningful way. While there are highlights included in the outline, everything you need for this stage is in the attached PowerPoint presentation. Information, pictures, and video links are included within the outline, but these serve only as a personal guide for the coach. Clicking on the PowerPoint link and going through each slide will fully cover every part of the intervention stage. In preparation for intervention, just as you will do for the module as a whole, you'll want to make sure you have any worksheets necessary to complete activities. For the stress module, there's just one worksheet that you'll need. You'll see the My Stress worksheet linked in the outline after discussion about the stress performance curve. As we're going through the PowerPoint, it should be clear at what point the presentation should be put on hold while you and the youth discuss and complete the worksheet. I'm going to go through the PowerPoint and everything included within it, just as you will when you're working with a team. You'll listen to the audio component on each slide, watch the video linked in the PowerPoint, and I'll point out places to pause for discussion so you will know how to proceed on your own. Let's dive in. So your first slide is just introductory, and you can move past this once you've clicked on slideshow, and you and the adolescent are ready to begin. Be sure you're both ready before moving on to the next slide, because the audio embedded in the slide begins automatically. We'll listen to the audio in the presentation so you'll be familiar with the information you're presenting. Here we go. And this is the one you can just move on past.
What exactly is stress? Stress is common. It is an intense feeling we have when we feel under pressure. A small amount of stress can be good for us and even motivate us to meet our goals. However, too much stress can get out of control and impact us negatively. Stress can affect our mood, overall well-being, and even the relationships we have with the people around us. Side effects include anxiety, depression, trouble concentrating, changes in weight, dizziness, and trouble sleeping. To make matters worse, these side effects can actually cause more stress. This is why it is important to find ways to cope with stress while it's still manageable and before it has time to do serious damage.
So once the audio ends, you have a chance to comment on what was said, or to ask questions, or to ask for input of the team. When you're both ready to move on, the next slide contains a video which you'll watch together. We'll go ahead and watch the video now.
We all know what it feels like to be stressed out. Before a big presentation, you might get sweaty palms and butterflies in your stomach.
I think.
But let's say your stress is more constant.
Take them yourself!
like a toxic work environment that fills you with dread. Scientists are learning more and more about how stress affects the body, and it turns out that some stress might actually be good for us.
We tend to think that stress is a bad thing, but actually it really matters what type of stress we're under.
Alyssa studies how stress affects the cells in our body and whether it can actually speed up the aging process. There are basically two types of stress, chronic and acute. Typically, we experience bursts of acute stress. Let's say you're taking a big test. Cortisol, the stress hormone, pumps into your bloodstream and extra oxygen flows into your brain. Your heart beats faster and your palms get a little sweaty. Once the test is over, your cortisol levels drop and your body goes back to a more balanced state. Research has found that small amounts of acute stress is actually a good thing.
During that recovery from stress, all sorts of processes happen in the cell that make us healthier.
Your cells clean up debris and produce special proteins, like what happens after you exercise. This helps our cells stay young and healthy. Chronic stress, on the other hand, is a totally different story. This type of stress is ongoing, like if you're constantly worried about paying the bills. The body is in a constant state of vigilance, and this type of stress can be dangerous to your health. Alyssa studied a group of caregivers who were under the constant stress of caring for a chronically ill child. She wanted to know if this stress made them age faster. She teamed up with UCSF Nobel Prize winner Elizabeth Blackburn to study the caregiver's cells, specifically their telomeres. Telomeres are the protective caps at the end of our chromosomes. They protect our DNA from danger and naturally get shorter with time, so they're a really good way to measure a person's health and age. But even though they shorten over time, not everyone's telomeres shorten at the same speed. For several years, the researchers measured the lengths of the caregiver's telomeres, and they found a direct correlation between the number of years spent caring for their child and decreased telomere length. But when they took a closer look at the data, they found that shorter telomeres weren't caused by how much burden was in the caregiver's life, but how stressed the caregiver felt.
It wasn't being a caregiver per se that predicted one's telomere length, but whether someone felt overly stressed by life. So the caregivers who felt particularly high levels of stress from their life had significantly shorter telomeres.
These caregivers had what is known as a threat response. That's when you see stress as a danger to your well-being. Your body stays on high alert, and it takes a long time to get back to a regular state. Caregivers with longer, healthier telomeres had a challenge response to stress. This means that you see stress as an obstacle to be dealt with. You still have a spike of cortisol, but you're able to recover from stress quickly. So the way you react to stress matters a lot, and sometimes just recognizing how you respond can help alleviate stress.
We believe that a lot of stress that people carry around is unconscious, so nothing might be happening. They might even say they don't feel stress, but their body has been conditioned to stay on high alert. Their nervous system is vigilant, they're not in restorative mode. But when we become aware of our thinking, aware of our thoughts and our typical responses, we can actually take away the power they have over our body.
Living a more healthy life isn't about avoiding stress. It's about engaging with life by exposing yourself to short-term stressors.
That's the spice of life, and our body responds to that by activating and recovering in a super healthy way.
How do you deal with stress? Let us know in the comments. And be sure to check out our other video on why the brain fixates on negative thoughts and what we can do about it.
So again, once the video has ended, there's a window for discussion, if desired, and when you're both ready, you can move on to the next audio slide. Sorry, let's represent.
Some stress in our life is actually a positive. If we never experience stress, we might lack drive and a sense of purpose. But if we experience stress too often or for too long, we can become overwhelmed, exhausted, and eventually break down. We want enough stress in our lives to keep us motivated, but not so much that we can't handle it. The key is to learn how to manage our stress rather than avoiding it or letting it control us.
So this slide provides a useful visual. The stress performance curve can serve as a conversational tool that begins to personalize stress by discussing where the teen might fall on the curve. The presentation is further personalized as we proceed to the next slide. Again, move on with the presentation when you and the teen are both ready for the audio that begins automatically when you continue.
It's important to understand how stress impacts you personally. Let's take a minute to think about your life. Overall, do you feel like your life is a low stress at a 1? Or do you feel like it's so overwhelmingly stressful it's a 10? Maybe you fall somewhere in the middle. If we can't identify our level of stress, how can we even attempt to manage it? We have to learn to identify the emotions we feel when we're stressed. Do you relate to any of these emotions? Maybe there are other emotions that come to mind when you think about stress. Stress isn't a one-size-fits-all. It comes in all different shapes and sizes. What might be stressful for one person just isn't for another, and that's okay.
This slide and the next cover information that pertains to this module's worksheet called My Stress. Once the audio is complete on both slides, you can pause to discuss and go through the worksheet.
When we feel stressed, our bodies can physically respond with what is called a symptom of stress. Certain events and situations in our lives can cause stressful feelings. These are known as triggers for stress. Both symptoms and triggers are unique to each individual who is experiencing them. Have you ever experienced any of these symptoms or triggers?
Now, the purpose of the worksheet is to help the youth connect their feelings, their experiences, and their triggers to stress. The aim is to validate their experiences and to help them dive into their emotions and surrounding circumstances and to see how stress impacts their life. Once the worksheet and discussion of it is complete, move on when you're both ready to consider unhealthy ways of dealing with stress.
Often the reason we make unhealthy choices has to do with events, situations, and the people in our lives that can bring us stress. We may deal with the stress by spending too much time watching TV or browsing on social media. We may become withdrawn from or lash out at the people who care about us. We can have drastic changes in our eating habits and sleeping patterns. We may turn to dangerous substances in attempts to avoid the stress altogether.
Again, there's an opportunity for discussion before moving to the next slide where healthy ways to deal with stress are covered.
The fastest way to reduce stress is by taking a deep breath and using your 5 senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. You can view a favorite photo, smell a specific scent, listen to your favorite music, chew a piece of gum, or hug your pet. This will allow you to quickly relax and calm yourself.
When you're both ready, move on to the final slide, which talks about ways to prevent stress.
Preventing stress means taking actions that keep our bodies and minds calm before an overwhelming situation comes up. We can practice things like deep breathing exercises, physical activity, healthy eating, spending time outdoors, getting enough sleep, staying organized, and interacting with others. Each of these activities will keep our bodies and minds in a positive place, so we will be better at handling life's challenges when they do come up.
All right, and that is the final slide. So going back here, that intervention PowerPoint is over at that point. And now we move on to the termination step in the change plan process. And termination is similar to planning. It serves as a quick summary of what was just talked about and offers an opportunity for any further thoughts or questions. The next step in the change plan process will be step 6, evaluation.